The moment Deanna Brennan's vintage Mustang sputtered and died on the remote desert highway, she realized her carefully planned photography expedition was about to take an unexpected turn. She coasted to the shoulder, dust rising in the rearview mirror as the engine gave one final wheeze. Deanna sat there for a moment, fingers gripping the steering wheel, trying to decide whether to laugh or cry. 3 days into a cross-country drive from Phoenix to the California coast, and her beloved car had finally given up. She should have known better than to trust a 40-year-old vehicle with temperamental mechanics, but the Mustang had belonged to her father, and she could never bring herself to part with it. Diana grabbed her phone. No signal, of course. She was somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, surrounded by red rock formations that would have been breathtaking if she was not currently stranded. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting everything in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful, but useless when it came to fixing a dead engine. She popped the hood and climbed out, squinting at the mechanical guts of the car like they might suddenly start making sense. They did not. Deanna knew her way around a camera, not a carburetor. The heat radiating from the engine made her step back, wiping sweat from her forehead. A sound caught her attention. Another vehicle approaching from the east. Deanna turned to see a sleek black Range Rover materialize through the heat shimmer on the asphalt. For a moment, she considered whether flagging down strangers in the desert was a good idea, but her options were limited. She raised her hand in what she hoped was a universal gesture of distress. The Range Rover slowed and pulled onto the shoulder behind her Mustang. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, probably early 30s, with dark hair that looked artfully tousled despite the desert wind. He wore dark jeans and a gray button-down with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, sunglasses hiding his eyes. "Car trouble," he called out, walking toward her. "What gave it away?" Deanna replied, then immediately regretted her sarcasm. "Sorry, yes, it just died." He pulled off his sunglasses, revealing striking blue eyes that seemed to assess both her and the situation quickly. "Isaac Quinlan," he said, extending his hand. "Deanna Brennan." His grip was firm, warm. "I don't suppose you know anything about vintage Mustangs." Isaac moved to the hood, peering inside with what looked like genuine interest. "I know a bit. What happened before it died? It started making this rattling sound about 20 miles back, then just lost power." He leaned in closer, checking connections and hoses with surprising familiarity. Could be the fuel pump, could be electrical, hard to say without proper tools. He straightened, brushing his hands together. "Where are you headed, Coast? I am a photographer doing a series on small-town America." Same direction, actually. There is a town about 40 miles west, Copper Creek. Small place, but they have a mechanic. I can give you a tow." Deanna hesitated. Accepting help from a stranger went against every safety lesson she had learned. But the alternative was standing on the roadside hoping for AAA coverage that probably did not extend to the middle of the desert. Something about Isaac seemed trustworthy. Maybe it was the way he had not immediately offered some patronizing explanation about how women should not drive old cars alone. "You have towing equipment in that thing?" she asked, gesturing to the Range Rover. Isaac grinned, transforming his serious face into something warmer. "I do a lot of backcountry driving. Always prepared." 20 minutes later, her Mustang was secured to his vehicle, and Deanna found herself in the passenger seat of the Range Rover, surrounded by luxury she rarely experienced. Leather seats, sophisticated dashboard, everything pristine despite Isaac's claim about backcountry adventures. "So what brings you to the middle of nowhere?" Deanna asked as they pulled back onto the highway. "I needed to get away from Las Vegas for a while." Thought I would drive to the coast, take my time, see places I usually fly over. Work in Vegas, something like that. He glanced at her briefly before focusing back on the road. What about you? Is the small-town photography thing a project or just for fun? Both. I have been working commercial photography for the past 5 years. Decent money, soul-crushing work. Product shots, corporate headshots, the occasional wedding. I saved up enough to take a few months off and do something I actually care about. That sounds like a good plan. What made you choose small towns? Deanna settled into her seat, surprised by how comfortable she felt. I grew up in a small town in Oregon, population of 800. When I moved to Phoenix for college, I thought I wanted the city life. But lately, I have been feeling disconnected. I wanted to capture what makes these little places special before they disappear completely. You think they are disappearing? I know they are. Drive through any small town and you will see it. Empty storefronts, young people leaving for cities, whole communities fading away. But there is still beauty there, still life. I want to document that. Isaac was quiet for a moment, navigating a curve in the highway. That is a good reason. Most people I know only care about things if they are trending or profitable. What do you do in Vegas? I own some businesses. Hospitality industry, mostly. Deanna noticed he kept his answers vague but decided not to press. Everyone deserved their privacy, especially on a spontaneous road trip. Instead, she watched the desert landscape roll past, the sun sinking lower, casting long shadows across the red earth. "Do you travel a lot for work?" she asked. "More than I would like. Usually flying between cities for meetings, staying in hotels that all look the same. This is the first time in years I have just driven somewhere with no schedule. Sounds lonely." "It is." He said it simply, without self-pity, just stating a fact. They lapsed into comfortable silence. Deanna found herself studying Isaac's profile when she thought he was not looking. He had the kind of face that was more interesting than conventionally handsome. Strong jaw, straight nose. Lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled more than his serious demeanor indicated. There was something solid about him, grounded, despite the expensive vehicle and vague answers about his work. "Tell me about Oregon," Isaac said eventually. "Your hometown." "Willowbrook, tiny place on the coast. My dad ran a fishing charter business my mom taught at the elementary school. It was the kind of town where everyone knew everyone, for better or worse." "You said was. They are not there anymore." Deanna felt the familiar tightness in her chest. "My dad died 6 years ago, heart attack on his boat. My mom moved to Portland afterward, could not stand being in Willowbrook without him." "I am sorry." "Thanks. He would have loved this trip. He was always the adventurous one, dragging us on camping trips and long drives to see some random landmark. My mom preferred staying home, but she went along because it made him happy." Deanna smiled at the memory. "The Mustang was his baby. Worked on it every weekend in our garage. He taught me to drive in that car. He would be proud you are still driving it. Except for the part where it is currently being towed behind us." Isaac laughed, a genuine sound that made Deanna feel lighter. "Fair point." They reached Copper Creek as the last light faded from the sky. The town was exactly what Diana had been looking for, a main street lined with old buildings, a diner with a neon sign, a single stoplight swaying in the breeze. Isaac pulled up to a garage at the end of the street, already closed for the night. "We can check in the morning," he said, unhitching the Mustang. "There is probably a motel somewhere." The motel turned out to be called the Desert Rose, a small establishment with a flickering vacancy sign and approximately 8 rooms. The woman at the front desk, elderly with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, looked them up and down with obvious interest. 2 rooms, Deanna said quickly. Only got one left, the woman replied, not sounding apologetic. Got a wedding party taking up most of the place. Cousins of mine getting married tomorrow. Deanna looked at Isaac, who kept his expression neutral. We will take it, he said. Separate beds, 2 queens, perfect. As they walked to room 7, Deanna felt simultaneously grateful for Isaac's help and anxious about sharing a room with a stranger. He seemed to sense her hesitation. I can sleep in the car if you are uncomfortable, he offered. No, it is fine. You have already helped me so much. I trust you. Which is either good instinct or terrible judgment. We will find out, he smiled. I promise to be a perfect gentleman. The room was dated but clean, with floral bedspreads and landscape paintings that probably came from a motel supply catalog. Deanna claimed the bed near the bathroom while Isaac set his bag on the other. An awkward silence settled between them, the intimacy of the shared space suddenly making them both aware they had known each other for less than 3 hours. I am starving, Deanna announced. That diner looked open. Food sounds good. The Copper Creek Diner was everything Deanna hoped it would be. Red vinyl booths, a long counter with spinning stools, black and white checkered floor. A handful of locals occupied various tables, all of whom turned to stare at the newcomers with unabashed curiosity. A waitress who could not have been more than 19 approached with menus and a smile. Evening, folks. Passing through. Car trouble, Deanna explained. Hoping your mechanic can help tomorrow. Old Joe can fix anything. He will get you sorted. She pulled out her order pad. What can I get you? They ordered burgers and coffee, settling into a booth by the window. Deanna pulled out her camera, a vintage Leica she preferred for documentary work, and took a few shots of the diner interior. The warm light, the worn surfaces, the people who belonged there. This was what she wanted to capture. You ever stop working? Isaac asked, amusement in his voice. Do you, Taché? Their food arrived quickly, and Deanna realized just how hungry she was. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Isaac spoke again. Can I ask you something? Why travel alone? No friends or boyfriend wanting to come along. No boyfriend. As for friends, most of them have jobs they cannot leave or kids, or think spending months driving around photographing gas stations sounds incredibly boring. Deanna took a sip of coffee. Plus, I wanted to do this alone, figure some things out. What kind of things? Life things. What I actually want, where I am going. The usual existential crisis stuff. She set down her cup. What about you? No wife or girlfriend worried about you disappearing into the desert, no wife. No girlfriend. Work takes up most of my time. That sounds lonely, Deanna said, echoing her earlier observation. It is, he agreed again, which is partly why I am here, trying to remember what it feels like to not be working constantly. Deanna studied him across the table. How is that going? Better since I picked you up, actually. Gives me something to focus on besides my own thoughts. The comment hung in the air between them, not quite flirtatious but definitely more than casual. Deanna felt something flutter in her chest, an awareness of Isaac as more than just a helpful stranger. She pushed the feeling aside. She was not looking for romance, especially not with someone she had just met under bizarre circumstances. They finished eating and walked back to the motel through the quiet streets. The town was peaceful in a way cities never were. No traffic sounds, no sirens, just crickets and the distant bark of a dog. Stars filled the sky, so many that Deanna stopped walking to stare up at them. I forgot how many stars you can see away from cities, she said softly. Isaac stood beside her, looking up. Worth the car trouble, maybe. Ask me again when I get the repair bill. Back in the room, they took turns in the bathroom, establishing a routine that felt oddly domestic. Deanna changed into sleep shorts and a tank top, suddenly self-conscious about the casual intimacy of the situation. When she emerged, Isaac was already in his bed, laptop open, typing something with focused intensity. "Still working?" she asked. "Just sending a quick email." "Then I am done, I promise." Deanna climbed into her own bed, pulling out her camera to review the day's photos. The diner shots were good, atmospheric. She had a few from earlier in her trip, that she was particularly proud of: an old man sitting outside a barber shop in Utah, a waitress in Arizona whose face told a story of hard years and persistent hope. "Can I see?" Isaac asked, closing his laptop. She hesitated, then moved to sit on the edge of his bed, angling the camera screen so he could view the images. He leaned in, studying each photo carefully, not rushing through them the way most people did. "These are incredible," he said. "You have a real eye for finding beauty in ordinary moments. That is the goal. Everyone photographs the Grand Canyon, but who documents the gas station attendant nearby? Those are the real stories. Tell me about this one." He pointed to a photo of an elderly couple sitting on their porch, holding hands. "That was in New Mexico. I stopped to photograph their house, which had this amazing folk art garden. They invited me in for lemonade, told me they had been married for 62 years. They met at a county fair when they were 17. Deanna smiled at the memory. They still looked at each other like they were falling in love for the first time. 62 years. That is incredible. You do not believe in that kind of love." Isaac was quiet for a moment. "I do not know. Everyone I know who is married either did it for business connections or they are miserable. I have never seen what you just described. Maybe you have been looking in the wrong places. Maybe." Diana became aware of how close they were sitting, their shoulders almost touching. She could smell his cologne, something subtle and woodsy. The laptop cast a blue glow across his face, highlighting the strong lines of his features. She stood quickly, returning to her own bed. "We should probably sleep. Early morning at the mechanic." "Right. Good night, Deanna." "Good night, Isaac." She turned off her bedside lamp, and the room plunged into darkness, broken only by the thin strip of light under the door. Deanna lay awake, listening to Isaac's breathing, thinking about how strange life could be. This morning she had been alone, focused on her project, not thinking about anyone else. Now she was sharing a motel room with a man who was essentially a stranger, feeling more comfortable than she had in months. The next morning arrived with bright sunlight streaming through the gap in the curtains. Deanna woke to find Isaac already up, dressed in fresh clothes, hair damp from a shower. He was on his phone, speaking in low tones. "I do not care what he wants. Tell him I am unavailable for the next 2 weeks. He can wait or find someone else." A pause. "Yes, I am sure. Handle it." He hung up, noticing Diana was awake. "Sorry, work emergency." "Everything okay?" "Fine. Just people who cannot handle things without constant supervision." He sounded frustrated. Ready for breakfast, they found the diner open again, serving what looked like half the town. The mechanic, old Joe, turned out to be a weathered man in his 70s with grease-stained hands and a kind face. He listened to Diana's description of the problem, nodded sagely, and said he would take a look after breakfast. "Might take a day or two to fix," he warned. "If it is the fuel pump, I will have to order the part. That is a 67 fastback, right? Beautiful machine." "How long is a day or two?" Deanna asked. "Could be tomorrow, could be 3 days. Depends on when I can get the part shipped here." Deanna felt her carefully planned schedule crumbling. She had reservations at various locations, a timeline to keep, but there was nothing to be done about it. She nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. Back at their booth, Isaac watched her push eggs around her plate. You could continue on without the car, he suggested. I am going the same direction. I could drop you at your next location. I could not ask you to do that. You are not asking. I am offering. Besides, I am enjoying the company. Beats driving alone. Deanna considered it. The practical part of her brain said it made sense. The cautious part reminded her she barely knew this man, but there was something about Isaac that made her want to take the risk. Okay, she agreed. But I am paying for gas, and if I start annoying you, just say the word. Deal. They spent the day in Copper Creek waiting for old Joe's assessment. Deanna photographed everything: the wedding preparations happening at the small church, the general store with its wooden porch, children playing in a dusty lot. Isaac tagged along, carrying her equipment bag without being asked, occasionally pointing out interesting details she might have missed. You are good at this, she said as they sat on a bench outside the post office. At what? Seeing things. Most people look without really observing. I learned to pay attention to details. In my work, you have to notice what is not being said, what is hiding under the surface. Sounds intense. It can be. He stretched his long legs out in front of him. This is better. No stakes, no pressure, just looking at the world. They grabbed lunch at a small Mexican restaurant, then wandered through the town cemetery, where Deanna took photos of weathered headstones and desert flowers growing wild between the graves. Isaac read names aloud, making up stories about who they might have been. Cornelius Fitzpatrick, 1842 to 1897. Definitely a prospector who struck it rich, spent all his money on a fancy suit, and died happy. Deanna laughed. Or he was the town drunk who fell down a mine shaft. Your version is less romantic. My version is more realistic. As the sun started to set, they found themselves at the edge of town, sitting on the hood of Isaac's Range Rover, watching colors paint the sky. It felt natural being with him, easy in a way Deanna had not experienced with anyone in a long time. Can I ask you something? Isaac said. Why did you really leave your job? Deanna thought about deflecting, giving him the easy answer about pursuing her art, but something about the moment made her want to be honest. I was engaged, she said. His name was Marcus. We had been together for 3 years, had the wedding planned, the whole future mapped out. Then I found out he had been cheating on me with one of my coworkers for 6 months. I am sorry. The worst part was not even the cheating. It was realizing I was not that upset. I was angry about being lied to, but I was not heartbroken about losing him, which made me wonder why I was marrying him in the first place. She picked at a thread on her jeans. I think I was following a script. You know, date for a few years, get engaged, get married, have kids. I never stopped to ask if that was what I actually wanted with him specifically. What do you want? I am still figuring that out, but I know I want to feel something real, not just going through the motions. She looked at Isaac. What about you? You must have had serious relationships. A few. Nothing that lasted. Most women I meet are interested in what I have, not who I am. Which is a millionaire with a nice car and connections. He said it matter-of-factly, without arrogance. Diana processed this information. It explained the expensive vehicle, the vague answers about work. Hospitality industry, you said. I owned several casinos in Vegas. Started with one 10 years ago, built it into something successful, bought a few more. I am not a billionaire, not even close, but I do okay. Why tell me now? Because you did not ask. Most people, the moment they meet me, they are calculating what I am worth, what I can do for them. You just needed help with your car. For the record, I still think you should pay for gas. He laughed, the tension breaking. Fair enough. Old Joe called that evening with news. The fuel pump was indeed shot, and he had located a replacement part. It would arrive in 3 days. Deanna made arrangements for him to hold onto the car and for her to pick it up on her way back through town in a few weeks. Isaac seemed pleased by the development, though he tried to hide it. They celebrated with drinks at the local bar, a dive establishment with a pool table and a jukebox playing country music. Deanna beat Isaac at pool twice, enjoying his competitive frustration. A few locals taught them a line dance, and Deanna found herself laughing more than she had in months, spinning in circles while Isaac tried to keep up with the steps. "You are terrible at this," she said as he went left when everyone else went right. "I run a business empire, but I cannot do the boot-scootin' boogie. Life is unfair." They stumbled back to the motel late, both slightly tipsy and in good spirits. Deanna had stopped worrying about the strangeness of the situation, stopped questioning why she felt so comfortable with someone she had known for barely 36 hours. Maybe that was the magic of the road, the way it stripped away pretense and let people just be. The next morning, they loaded Diana's photography equipment into the Range Rover and said goodbye to Copper Creek. The town had already started to feel familiar, and Deanna found herself sad to leave. She photographed the Leaving Copper Creek sign as they drove past. "Where to?" Isaac asked. "There is a town called Silver Ridge about 200 miles west, supposed to have amazing ghost town vibes. Then I was planning to head up through the mountains into California." "Perfect. I am in no hurry." They drove through changing landscapes, desert giving way to scrubland, then pine forests as they gained elevation. Deanna took photos through the window, capturing the way light filtered through trees, the curve of the road ahead. Isaac kept the music low, some indie playlist that fit the mood perfectly. They talked about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in Chicago, the son of a construction worker and a nurse, how he had worked his way through college dealing poker in underground games, how his first casino had been a massive gamble that somehow paid off. She told him about her early days in Phoenix, waiting tables while trying to build a photography business, the slow climb to stability, the emptiness that came with achieving success she did not actually want. "You ever regret it?" Deanna asked. "Building something so big?" "You said work takes up all your time." "Sometimes. I started because I wanted to prove I could do it. Now I have 1,000 employees depending on me, investors, responsibilities I cannot just walk away from. The business runs itself mostly, but there is always something that needs my attention." "So why take this trip?" Isaac was quiet for a long moment. "I turned 32 last month, spent the day in back-to-back meetings, ate dinner alone in my office. I looked around at my life and realized I was not happy. I had money, success, everything I thought I wanted, but I was miserable. I needed to get away, to remember what it felt like to live rather than just work." "Is it helping?" "More than I expected, especially the past couple days." The comment made Diana's heart skip, but she did not acknowledge it. They were becoming friends, that was all. Two people sharing a journey, enjoying each other's company. Nothing more complicated than that. They reached Silver Ridge in the late afternoon. The town was exactly as advertised, half-abandoned buildings with character, old mining equipment rusting photogenically in empty lots. They checked into the only motel, this time getting separate rooms without discussion. Deanna felt a strange disappointment about that, which she firmly ignored. She spent the golden hour before sunset photographing the town, Isaac following with her equipment. A stray dog adopted them temporarily, trotting alongside as they explored. They found an old theater with faded movie posters still visible in the windows, a schoolhouse overtaken by weeds, a saloon that had been converted into an antique store run by a woman named Margaret, who told them ghost stories about the building. "You two make a lovely couple," Margaret said as they browsed dusty shelves. "Oh, we are not," Deanna started. "Just friends," Isaac finished. Margaret looked skeptical but did not push. Deanna bought a vintage compass, drawn to its scratched brass surface, and the way the needle still pointed true north. Isaac insisted on buying an old photograph of the town in its heyday, saying it would be a good reminder of the trip. Dinner was at a surprisingly good Italian restaurant run by a family from New Jersey who had moved west for the small-town lifestyle. They shared a bottle of wine and pizza that rivaled anything Deanna had eaten in Phoenix. The conversation flowed easily, touching on books they loved, places they wanted to visit, embarrassing childhood stories. "I have a confession," Isaac said over dessert. "I looked up your photography after you fell asleep last night. You have a website. Your commercial work is good, but your personal projects are extraordinary. Why were you hiding that?" Deanna felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I was not hiding it. You did not ask. The series you did on street musicians, that deserves to be in galleries." It was in a gallery. "A group show in Phoenix 2 years ago sold exactly one print." "Then the gallery was wrong. Your work matters." The sincerity in his voice made Deanna's eyes prick with tears. She blinked them away, taking a sip of wine. "Thank you, that means a lot. I mean it. You are talented, Deanna. Do not let anyone convince you otherwise." Walking back to the motel, Deanna felt the night air cool against her skin. Isaac walked close beside her, their hands occasionally brushing. Each contact felt electric, charged with possibility. At her door they paused, neither quite ready to say goodnight. "Today was really nice," Deanna said. "It was. Same time tomorrow. I will be the one with too many cameras." Isaac smiled, and for a moment Deanna thought he might kiss her. Instead, he squeezed her shoulder gently and headed to his own room. She stood in her doorway for a long moment, trying to understand the disappointment coursing through her. Inside, she lay in bed scrolling through the day's photos, finding Isaac in the background of several shots. He had a good face for photography, expressive without being showy. She found herself wondering what he was doing in his room, whether he was thinking about her. This was getting complicated. She was supposed to be figuring out her life, not developing feelings for a millionaire casino owner who lived in Vegas while she had no idea where she even wanted to settle down. It was impractical, impossible, doomed from the start, but her heart did not seem to care about practicality. The next 2 days in Silver Ridge established a pattern. Mornings spent photographing while the light was soft, afternoons exploring, evenings over good food and better conversation. Isaac opened up more, talking about the pressure of running multiple businesses, the way people treated him differently when they knew about his money, the isolation that came with success. Deanna shared her own struggles, the way she felt like she was constantly performing in her old job, the fear that she was not good enough to make it as a serious artist. They hiked to an abandoned mine on their second day, crawling through safe sections with flashlights, marveling at the effort it must have taken to carve these tunnels by hand. Isaac held Deanna's hand to help her over rough spots, and neither of them mentioned how he kept holding it even on smooth ground. That night, sitting on the hood of his Range Rover under a sky full of stars, Deanna felt herself falling. It was gradual and inevitable, like water running downhill. Every conversation revealed more depth to Isaac, more kindness, more humor. He was not just a rich guy on a road trip. He was someone who listened when she talked, who remembered small details, who looked at her like she mattered. "What are you thinking?" Isaac asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "That this feels too easy, like I have known you for years instead of days. I have been thinking the same thing." He turned to look at her. Deanna, I need to tell you something, her heart hammered. Okay. I was not just randomly driving when I found you. I mean, I was, but I had been on the road for almost a week at that point, and I was starting to wonder what I was even doing. Then I saw you standing by your car, and something just clicked. Like the universe was saying, here, this is what you needed. He took a breath. These past few days with you have been the best I have had in years, maybe ever. And I know we just met, and this is probably crazy, but I really like you, more than like you. Deanna felt like all the air had left her lungs. Isaac, you do not have to say anything right now. I just wanted you to know. Whatever happens next, these days meant something to me. She reached over and took his hand, threading her fingers through his. They meant something to me too. I like you too, a lot, but I am scared. Of what? Of this being just a road trip thing, of getting back to real life and realizing it does not work, of getting hurt again. She squeezed his hand. You live in Vegas running casinos. I have no idea where I am going to live or how I am going to support myself doing the photography I care about. We are in completely different worlds. So we figure it out. We do not have to have all the answers right now. What if we cannot figure it out? What if we can? He shifted to face her fully. I am not asking you to marry me, Deanna. I am just asking if we can see where this goes. No pressure, no expectations. Just us, seeing if this feeling is real. Deanna looked at him, at his earnest face and hopeful eyes, and felt her fear warring with possibility. She had spent so long being careful, being practical. Maybe it was time to take a risk. Okay, she whispered. Let us see where it goes. Isaac leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She did not. Their first kiss was soft, tentative, a question and an answer. Then he cupped her face with his hands and kissed her properly. And Diana felt the world narrow to just this moment, this person, this feeling of rightness. They stayed on that hood for hours, kissing and talking and kissing more, making up for days of dancing around their feelings. When they finally headed back to the motel, Isaac walked her to her door, kissed her goodnight like she was precious, and left before either of them could complicate things further. Diana lay in bed with a smile on her face, feeling like a teenager with her first crush. It was ridiculous and wonderful and terrifying. She grabbed her phone, typing out a text to her best friend Sarah, who had been following her trip through occasional messages. I met someone, she typed. It is too soon to tell, but I think this might be something real. Sarah's response came immediately despite the late hour. Tell me everything. Diana gave her the abbreviated version, ending with, I know it sounds crazy. It sounds like a movie, but good crazy. You deserve good crazy. The next morning, they left Silver Ridge with plans to meander through California, taking back roads and stopping wherever looked interesting. The dynamic between them had shifted, becoming more openly affectionate. Isaac kept reaching for her hand. Deanna found excuses to lean against him. They were figuring out the physical language of a new relationship, learning what felt right. They stopped at a roadside fruit stand and bought fresh cherries, eating them as they drove, laughing when juice dripped down their chins. They detoured to see a waterfall that turned out to be barely a trickle but made for good photos anyway. They had lunch at a diner where the waitress called everyone honey, and the pie was homemade. I do not want this to end, Deanna said as they shared a slice of apple pie. It does not have to. We can keep going as long as you want. What about your business? They will survive without me. I have been answering the truly urgent stuff in the mornings. Everything else can wait. He took her hand across the table. I am exactly where I want to be. That night they stayed in a small coastal town called Seabrook, finally hitting the Pacific Ocean. Deanna stood on the beach as the sun set, camera in hand, trying to capture the impossible beauty of it. Isaac stood behind her, arms wrapped around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. "This is what I needed," Deanna said softly. "The ocean, the freedom, you, all of it. I am glad your car broke down." She laughed, leaning back against him. "Me too. Do not tell old Joe, though. He worked hard on that fuel pump." They got separate rooms again, but this time, Isaac came to hers after they had both showered and changed. They sat on her bed, backs against the headboard, her laptop open as she showed him more of her portfolio. He asked thoughtful questions about composition and lighting, genuinely interested in her artistic process. "I want to show you something," Isaac said, pulling out his phone. He navigated to a folder of photos, then handed it to her. "I have been taking pictures too. Nothing as good as yours, just things I wanted to remember." Deanna scrolled through images of their trip. Her photographing in Copper Creek, the cemetery, the Mexican restaurant, the line dancing at the bar, though she had no idea who had taken that one, the view from the abandoned mine. Her on the beach tonight, silhouetted against the sunset. In every photo she looked happy, alive in a way she barely recognized. "You have a good eye," she said. "I had a good subject." She set the phone aside and kissed him, slow and deep. They made out like teenagers, hands wandering but not crossing certain lines, both aware that once they went there, everything would change. Finally, reluctantly, Isaac pulled back. "I should go. Before I do not want to. You could stay. We do not have to, I mean, we could just sleep." He looked tempted but shook his head. "When we take that step, I want it to be right, not rushed." "Okay," Deanna nodded, appreciating his restraint even as her body protested. "Okay, but for the record, I am dying here. Me too." He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. "Soon, I promise." They spent the next week working their way up the California coast, stopping in small towns and scenic viewpoints. Deanna photographed everything: fishing boats in harbors, elderly couples walking on beaches, children building sandcastles. Isaac continued to be her assistant and companion, always supportive, always interested. They talked about their pasts more deeply. Isaac admitted that growing up without money had made him hungry to prove himself, maybe too hungry. Deanna confessed that her father's sudden death had left her terrified of loss, which was probably why she had stayed in a safe but unfulfilling relationship for so long. "I think I was trying to control everything," she said, as they hiked through a redwood forest. "If I planned perfectly, nothing bad could happen, but life does not work that way. No, it does not. I spent years building contingency plans for my business, preparing for every possible disaster, but I never planned for being unhappy. That caught me by surprise. Are you happy now?" Isaac stopped walking, turning to face her on the trail. Filtered sunlight created patterns on his face. "I am. The happiest I have been in a very long time." They kissed, surrounded by ancient trees, and Deanna felt a peace she had been chasing for years. Maybe happiness was not something you planned for. Maybe it was something you stumbled into when you were brave enough to accept it. In a town called Mendocino, they finally made love. It happened naturally, inevitably, after a day spent exploring tide pools and an evening with wine and good food. Isaac came to her room, and this time when they started kissing, neither of them pulled back. He was gentle and attentive, making sure she was okay every step of the way, and afterward they lay tangled together, talking softly in the darkness. "I am falling in love with you," Isaac said, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "I know it is fast, maybe too fast, but it is true." Deanna's heart swelled. "I am falling in love with you too. It terrifies me. We will figure it out, I promise." She wanted to believe him. In that moment, wrapped in his arms, she did believe him. They continued north, crossing into Oregon. Deanna showed Isaac the places she had loved as a child: rocky beaches where she had hunted for agates, the ice cream shop where she had worked her first job, the lighthouse her father had taken her to every year on her birthday. They drove past Willowbrook, but Deanna was not ready to stop there yet. Maybe another trip. Isaac received a call from his business manager, something urgent that required his attention. Deanna listened as his voice changed, becoming more authoritative, decisive. This was the Isaac who ran a multimillion-dollar operation, and it was both impressive and slightly intimidating. When he hung up, he looked frustrated. "I need to go to Vegas for a couple days. There is a situation with one of the properties that I really need to handle in person." He took her hand. "Come with me to Vegas. I know it is not part of your small town project, but I want you to see where I live, what my life is like. The real version, not the road trip version." Deanna hesitated. Part of her wanted to stay in the bubble they had created, where they could be just Isaac and Deanna, not a millionaire and a struggling artist. But he was right. If this was going to be real, she needed to see all of him. "Okay, but I am staying in a hotel. I do not want to presume." "You can stay with me. I have plenty of space, and I promise to be on my best behavior." His place turned out to be a penthouse in one of his own hotels, a sprawling space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Strip. It was beautiful and impersonal, decorated by someone who clearly had excellent taste but no personal connection to the space. Deanna wandered through rooms, noting the lack of photographs, personal items, anything that indicated who actually lived there. "It is not very homey," Isaac admitted, watching her. "I am never here long enough to care." "That is sad." "I know." He had meetings all the next day, so Deanna explored Vegas through her camera lens. She found unexpected beauty in the contrast between the glittering casinos and the neighborhoods behind them, the people who lived and worked in the city's shadow. She photographed street performers, construction workers on their lunch breaks, a wedding chapel with a faded sign. That evening, she met Isaac at his flagship casino, the Meridian. He gave her a tour, introducing her to key staff members who clearly respected him. She saw him in his element, confident and in control, solving problems and making decisions. It was attractive but also overwhelming. This was his world, and she did not know if she fit into it. They had dinner at the casino's signature restaurant, a 5-star establishment where the chef came out to greet Isaac personally. Deanna wore a dress she had packed for nice dinners, feeling underdressed despite looking fine. Other diners kept glancing at their table, clearly recognizing Isaac, and she realized how different his life was from hers. "You are quiet," Isaac observed. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. I am just processing. This is a lot. Too much. Maybe, I do not know." She set down her fork. "Isaac, you are a millionaire who owns casinos and lives in a penthouse. I am a photographer who just quit her job and is living off savings. We exist in completely different worlds. We exist in the same world, we just have different jobs. It is more than that. Look around. Everyone here knows who you are. You have responsibilities, employees, this whole empire. What do I have? A broken-down Mustang and a camera." Isaac reached across the table, taking her hand. "You have talent and passion and a perspective that makes me see things differently. You make me want to be more than just a businessman. That matters more than money." "But what does this look like long-term? Do I move to Vegas? Do you give up your business? How does this work?" "I do not know yet, but I know I do not want to lose you because we are too scared to try." Deanna blinked back tears. "I am scared. Me too. But I think you are worth being scared for." They left the restaurant, walking through the casino. Isaac showed her the high roller rooms, the security operations, the behind-the-scenes machinery that kept everything running. He introduced her to Maria, the woman who had been his assistant for 8 years, who looked at Diana with warm curiosity. "It is good to see him smile like this," Maria said when Isaac stepped away to handle something. "He works too hard, does not let himself enjoy life. You are good for him." "I am not sure I am. We are very different. Different can be good. Balance, you know." Back at the penthouse, Deanna stood at the windows looking out at the city lights. Isaac came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Talk to me," he said softly. "I am trying to imagine what a life with you looks like. I see you in meetings and running this empire, and I wonder where I fit. I do not want to be someone's accessory, the girlfriend who tags along to events and has no purpose." "Is that what you think would happen?" "I do not know. Maybe." Isaac turned her to face him. "Listen to me. I fell for you because of who you are, not who I want you to be. You are a talented artist with something important to say. I do not want to change that. If anything, I want to support it. Help you get your work seen, connect you with galleries, give you the freedom to create without worrying about money. I do not want your charity. It would not be charity. It would be investing in someone I love, someone I believe in." He cupped her face. "But if that makes you uncomfortable, then forget I said it. You find your own path, and I will just be the guy who supports you however you need. I just want to be in your life, Deanna. However that looks." She kissed him, pouring all her fear and hope and love into it. They made love again that night, slower and more intense than before, like they were sealing a promise neither had quite articulated yet. The next morning, Diana woke alone in Isaac's massive bed. She found him on the balcony, coffee in hand, staring at the city. She poured her own cup and joined him. "I have been thinking," he said without preamble, "about what you said last night. You are right that we need to figure out logistics. So here is what I propose. You finish your road trip, take however long you need. Do your project the way you envisioned. Meanwhile, I am going to restructure some things at work, delegate more, make it so I do not have to be here constantly. When you are done, we figure out together where we want to be. Maybe it is Vegas, maybe it is Phoenix, maybe it is some small town you fell in love with. We decide together. You would really relocate. I would really consider it. The business does not need me physically present all the time. I have been using it as an excuse to avoid having a life. But I want a life now, with you." Deanna felt tears spill over. "I want that too. I am just scared of messing this up." "Then we will be scared together." She laughed through her tears, and he pulled her close. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other as the city came to life below them. Diana stayed in Vegas for another 2 days while Isaac finished his business. She continued photographing, finding art in unexpected places. And in the evenings, they acted like a normal couple cooking dinner together in his rarely used kitchen, watching movies on his massive television, making love and talking until late into the night. On her last morning, Isaac drove her back to Copper Creek to pick up her Mustang. The drive took most of the day, retracing the route where they had first met. Old Joe had the car running perfectly, looking proud of his work. "She will get you where you need to go now," he said, patting the hood. Deanna paid him, adding a generous tip. Isaac transferred her photography equipment back to her car, and they stood in the garage, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "How long do you think you need?" Isaac asked. "For the rest of your trip, maybe a month." "I want to go through Oregon and Washington, document some of the coastal communities, then swing back through Idaho and Montana on my way back to Phoenix. And then we figure out what comes next." He kissed her softly. "I am going to miss you. I am going to miss you too. But this is important. I need to finish what I started." "I know. Just promise you will call me every day." "I promise." They kissed again, longer this time, both reluctant to let go. Finally, Deanna climbed into her Mustang and Isaac got into his Range Rover. She watched him drive away in her rearview mirror, feeling like part of her heart was leaving with him. The next month was both wonderful and difficult. Diana threw herself into her photography, capturing images she was genuinely proud of. But every night she called Isaac, and they talked for hours about their days, their dreams, their future. He sent her flowers at random hotels. She mailed him postcards from every town she visited. They were building something real, just from a distance. Diana's perspective shifted during those weeks alone. She realized that Isaac had not asked her to change. He loved her exactly as she was, supported her dreams without trying to control them. The fear she had been carrying started to ease, replaced by excitement about what they could build together. She also started to imagine futures more concretely. Maybe they could split time between Vegas and somewhere quieter. Maybe she could exhibit her work in his casinos, bringing art to unexpected spaces. Maybe they could create something entirely new together, combining his resources with her vision. In a small town in Washington, she met an elderly woman who ran a photography gallery in her converted barn. They spent an afternoon looking through Diana's portfolio, and the woman offered her a show. "You have something special," she said. "Real heart in these images. People need to see this work." Diana called Isaac that night, crying happy tears. "I got a gallery show. A real one, not just a group exhibition. Someone believes in my work. I told you they would. I believe in your work too. I know. I am starting to believe it myself." The month passed both too slowly and too quickly. Finally, Diana found herself driving back through the desert, heading to Vegas. She had offered to go to Phoenix instead, but Isaac insisted he wanted her to come to him. "I have a surprise," he said mysteriously. When she pulled up to his building, Isaac was waiting outside. He looked good, tanned and happy, his smile wide as she climbed out of the car. They kissed like people who had been apart too long, not caring who saw. "I have something to show you," he said, taking her hand. He led her not to the penthouse but to a different building a few blocks away. It was a renovated warehouse, all exposed brick and high ceilings. He unlocked the door and brought her inside to a massive, light-filled space. "What is this?" Diana asked, confused. "It is yours if you want it." He watched her face nervously. "The ground floor can be a gallery and workspace for you. There is an apartment upstairs, 2 bedrooms, full kitchen, balcony. I thought maybe you could use a home base for when you are not traveling. Somewhere that is just yours." Diana walked through the space, stunned. It was perfect, exactly what she would have dreamed of if she had dared to dream. Natural light poured through huge windows. The walls were ideal for hanging photographs. The upstairs apartment was cozy and charming, completely different from his sterile penthouse. "Isaac, I cannot accept this. It is too much. It is not a gift. It is an investment in your career. You pay me back when you sell your work. Or not, I do not really care about the money. I just want you to have a space where you can create, where you can build the life you want." He took her hands. "I told you I would support you however you needed. This is how. You bought me a building. I bought us a future, if you want it." Diana looked around the space, imagining her photographs on these walls, imagining working here, living here. Imagining Isaac coming over after work, cooking dinner together, building a life. It was terrifying and perfect. "What about you? Where do you fit into this?" "Wherever you want me. I will be upstairs if you will have me, or I will stay at the penthouse and visit. Or we find a third place that is ours together. I am flexible." She laughed, feeling joy bubble up. "You really restructured your business." "I really did. I promoted Maria to COO. She is handling day-to-day operations. I am staying on as owner and final decision-maker, but I do not have to be here constantly anymore. I can work remotely most of the time, come in for big meetings. It is what I should have done years ago. So you did all this for me." I did it for us. I did it because you showed me that life is more than work. That connection and love and art matter just as much as business success. You changed me, Deanna." She kissed him then, pouring everything she felt into it. When they finally broke apart, she was crying again, but they were happy tears. "Yes," she said. "Yes to all of it. The space, the future, you. Yes." They spent that night in the empty apartment making love on blankets Isaac had brought up, talking about how they would furnish the place, what they would do together. It felt like the beginning of something real and lasting. Over the next few months, Deanna moved into the warehouse space. Isaac was there every step of the way, helping her paint walls and hang lights and set up her equipment. They picked out furniture together, blending her style with his. The apartment became a home in a way his penthouse never had. Diana's gallery show in Washington was a success, selling half her pieces and getting attention from larger galleries. She started getting commission requests, people wanting her documentary style for their own projects. Isaac connected her with contacts who believed in her work, but he never pushed, never tried to control her career. They settled into a rhythm. Some nights Isaac stayed at the penthouse for early meetings, but most nights he was with her. They cooked together, explored Vegas beyond the Strip, took weekend trips to the desert. Deanna continued her photography, now with a base to work from. Isaac stepped back from his business enough to actually enjoy his life. 6 months after Deanna had moved into the warehouse, Isaac took her back to Copper Creek. They had dinner at the diner, said hello to old Joe at the garage, walked through the town where they had first admitted their feelings. "I have been thinking about that night on the hood of my car," Isaac said as they sat in the same spot, stars overhead. "When you told me you were scared, I remember. Are you still scared?" Deanna considered the question honestly. "Sometimes, but mostly I am just happy." "You make me happy, Isaac." He shifted, reaching into his pocket. "I am still scared too, terrified actually, but I know what I want." He pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a simple, beautiful ring. "Deanna Brennan, will you marry me? Will you keep making me see the world differently, keep challenging me to be better, keep building this life with me?" Diana's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Yes. Oh my God, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed under the same stars where they had first fallen in love. It felt right, inevitable, like everything had been leading to this moment since her car had broken down on that desert highway. They got married 6 months later, a small ceremony in Willowbrook, Oregon, where Deanna's father's boat was still docked, now run by one of his old fishing buddies. Diana's mother cried through the entire ceremony. Isaac's parents, who Deanna had grown to love, stood with them. Maria was there, beaming like a proud mother. Friends from Diana's old life in Phoenix mixed with Isaac's Vegas colleagues, everyone celebrating the unlikely couple who had found each other in the middle of nowhere. For their honeymoon, they took another road trip, this time through the Southwest, stopping at every small town that caught their interest. Deanna photographed everything. Isaac drove and held her hand and looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. 2 years later, Diana had a solo show at a prestigious gallery in New York, her series on American small towns finally getting the recognition it deserved. Critics praised her ability to find dignity and beauty in overlooked places. Isaac was there for the opening, standing in the background, letting her have the spotlight but radiating pride. 3 years after that, they bought a second home in Oregon, a renovated farmhouse near Willowbrook where they could escape when Vegas became too much. They talked about having kids someday, but for now, they were enjoying building their life together. Isaac stepped back further from the business, trusting his team to handle more. He started a foundation supporting arts education in underprivileged communities, with Diana helping to shape the vision. She continued her photography, now teaching workshops and mentoring young artists while still pursuing her own projects. They fought sometimes, usually about Isaac working too much or Diana being too independent to accept help. But they always talked through it, always came back to the love that had started on a desert highway when her car broke down and he stopped to help. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they drove back to Copper Creek one more time. Old Joe was still there, now in his early 80s but still fixing cars. The Desert Rose Motel had new owners, but the room where they had first shared space was available. They took it for old time's sake, laughing about how awkward they had been, how neither had known they were falling in love. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if my car had not broken down?" Diana asked, lying in Isaac's arms in the dated motel room. "If you had just driven past?" "Every day. Then I thank whoever or whatever made sure it did break down, right when I needed you most. I needed you too, I just did not know it yet. We saved each other." Diana tilted her head up to kiss him. "We did. And we are going to keep saving each other every day for the rest of our lives." "That sounds perfect to me." They fell asleep holding each other, the desert quiet outside, stars overhead, two people who had taken a chance on a stranger and found forever instead. The road trip that started with a broken-down Mustang had led them exactly where they needed to be together, building a life neither had imagined but both were grateful for every single day. Years later, when people asked how they met, Diana and Isaac would smile at each other, remembering that dusty highway and the moment everything changed. They would tell the story of a millionaire who stopped to help a woman with a broken car, not knowing that simple act of kindness would lead to the greatest love of his life. They would talk about taking chances, being brave enough to be vulnerable, building something real in a world that often felt superficial. And they would always end the story the same way, with Diana squeezing Isaac's hand and saying, "Best car trouble I ever had," while Isaac kissed her temple and whispered, "Best decision I ever made." Because sometimes the journey matters just as much as the destination. And sometimes, when you are brave enough to let someone in, the road leads exactly where it is supposed to go, straight to forever.